the L'chaim. For those 3 days, year after year, their presence helped define Green Road Synagogue's warmth at its very best for my wife. We are about to celebrate Chag HaSukkot. The Tosafot commenting on Tractate Sukkah in the Talmud comments, Roy Sukkah Achat L'chol Yisrael. A single sukkah is worthy of embracing all of Israel. Barbara Sukkot of the Spirit embraced all of Israel. Malk and I will never forget how upon a return home from a visit to Israel many years ago, in the dead of winter, we were greeted at the airport by Barbara and Yehuda Yabad L'chaim, a gratuitous act of friendship that symbolized her embrace. Remembering Barbara with deep affection, Yehi Zichra Baruch. And I just want to add, she was indeed a woman of tremendous grace, a woman of modesty, of humility, someone who had lived a very private life. But despite living a very private life, her impact was very public and widespread. We will miss her terribly. Yehi Zichra Baruch.
I'd like to call up Yehuda to share some words.
Thank you for coming. I can't add very much to what Rabbi Granenstein and Rabbi Blau said, and I appreciate their words. Yemei Shnotenu Shivim Shana V'im Bigvurot Shmonim. The days of our lives are but 70, and if with strength we reach 80. She came very close, but she never reached 80. But she had much strength, great strength, and she was a marvelous partner in almost 53 years of marriage. She had values, strength, and many wonderful qualities. Together we raised 4 sons, and these are sons that grow up to be men of values, Jewish values, worldly values, and they married wonderful women who shared their values. She will be sorely missed by her family. V'yisro b'tzor ha'chayim et nishmata, v'tanuach b'shalom al mishkava. May she be bonded with the bond of life, and may she repose and rest in a resting place. Thank you.
On behalf of the Shafran family, I'd like to call up Alana, Barbara's niece, to share some words.
For as long as I can remember, I have been part of a tiny matriarchal society governed by 2 very strong women. Our little clan was made up of these sovereigns, their kind husbands, my 2 brothers, and my 4 loud, rambunctious, and smelly cousins. Our childhood was a good one, consisting of holidays, birthday parties, basketball games, the University of Michigan, and lots of graduations. Because they were so close, we were so close. Our lives inextricably intertwined with one another. Over time, our clan has grown to include spouses and children, a couple of animals, but the sovereigns have stayed the same, It has been a really long rule. As I look to the future, I can barely process the loss of one of our matriarchs. I cannot fathom what this is going to do to our little clan. My mother has lost her best friend, her co-sovereign, her confidant, her travel buddy, basically her lifelong buddy. My dear, dear rambunctious cousins have lost their mother, their true north. I hope that we can continue to be as close of a clan as we have always been. I know that is what my Aunt Barbara would have wanted. There certainly is a lot of love in our clan, a lot of respect, and a lot of real delight in one another. We are all very good friends, as well as relatives. The matriarchs, my mother and her sister, have done well. As the only girl in this testosterone-heavy clan, I can only endeavor to carry the mantle of these strong matriarchs, but I will try.
I'd like to call up Barbara's sons, Philip, Ben, John, and Joseph, to share some words.
I was fortunate to be able to see the love that my parents had with one another for more than 50 years. They raised the four of us together, they worked together, they shared music, but most importantly were their grandchildren. And I would like to share a story from my childhood. My brothers and I were little kids. We were expected to behave properly for Shabbat. However, being the fighting brothers that we were, we did not behave on Shabbat. With our behavior being as it was, Mom told us that next Shabbat we were going to have peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and tuna sandwiches. Next Shabbat she followed through with the sandwiches, but for dessert she gave us ice cream sundaes. Needless to say, we did not behave the next week. Mom devoted her time and energy to maintaining the relationship we had with different people over many, many years and great distances. She valued and always placed a priority on friends and family, which I greatly admire. But I do want to take this opportunity to thank Mrs. Carolyn Lee, for she is a great person, a friend of my mother, and all of our family for many years. Mom had a number of friends to go through different groups. The coffee group, who got together on Fridays, the birthday group, who share the same birth date, and they got together once a year to celebrate together. She had friends growing up in Rochester, New York, and one of them was Maryland class, and whenever we were there in Rochester, she would take us to go see her. Mom met Marty Swaim at Oberlin College. They have been friends since. They would travel between Washington area and Cleveland. A number of years ago, they traveled with their husbands to spend time in Italy. Joan Rugershow has been a very, very close friend, along with Ernest and her family. When the Rugershow family moved from Cleveland to the Washington, D.C. area, they spoke on a regular basis, and our families were very fortunate to be able to share smachot. A number of years ago, they traveled together on a Jewish tour in a group that went through Spain. Mom was also very close with cousins. After the war, World War II, Mother's grandfather was in shul and was told by somebody that he had family in Israel. He said this because you daven with the same accent. He didn't know of any family in Israel, but when he went to Israel, he met the Har-Zohar family, and it turned out that they were family. Mom and their daughter Tamar spent much, much time together in Jerusalem in the United States. Tamar passed away a number of years ago, but Mom always makes certain to get together with Tamar's children in Israel. Mark Schweiger, a first cousin who was more like a second sister. They grew up with years between themselves, and they lived in different cities. But when Malk and Meir made Aliyah, it was a given that all trips we took to Israel were an opportunity for us together. There are many stories that I can tell about Malk and Meir, the children and the grandchildren, that I'm not going to tell, but I'm going to point out that they came this past week to spend time with the family, but particularly with Mom. Finally, her closest friend. When Aunt Marla and Uncle Joe were married, they moved to Caracas, Venezuela. When Alana was born, Mom went off to Caracas to help Aunt Marla. When Eric was born, she again went to Caracas to help her sister. When we were a little bit later, when they had moved back to Cleveland, we were at a family Hanukkah party with the Broslow family. And Mom got the call that Aunt Marla was going to be delivering David. We left the party. Mom was dropped off at the house, the Shaffron's house, and she took care of Alana and Eric while he was being born. As I've grown older, I see things differently, more clearly than I did as a child. I do not remember how often Mom and Aunt Marla would call one another when I was a kid. However, as I grew, I saw that they spoke at all times of the day. The two of them took trips together. Both families would get together for Shabbat and the Chagim. I've been quite fortunate to have seen the relationship between Mom and Aunt Marla, two sisters and best friends. Their bond growing closer with the passing of time has not changed. It has only gotten stronger and stronger. Today, Mom has passed the baton to her next generation to maintain our close relationships in our family, with our aunts and uncles, our cousins, and close friends. Having proper dedication to Shabbat and Chagim, and mitzvah, the mitzvah of doing things to help people who need, but not for the attention.
About 16 years ago, we were in this very room for the funeral of Fanny Shaffron. The service hadn't yet begun. Our mom turned to my wife, Noki, and said, "When I die and you come home from my funeral, I don't want you to eat bagels and lox. I want you to eat spaghetti and meatballs." To which Noki replied, "It's not enough that you tell us to do when you're alive, you're also going to tell us to do when you're dead?" "Fine," said our mother. "I'll prepare the spaghetti and meatballs in advance and put them in the freezer. All you got to do is take them out and heat them up." To which Noki agreed. By the way, our mother stipulated that we had to make people laugh during so we fulfilled our obligation, I think. When I found out that our mother's cancer had returned, I jotted down on a piece of paper 4 principles that should guide our behavior toward our mother during what we all knew would be a difficult period. These principles were humor, dignity, intelligence, and love. At the time, I looked at those words and I realized I had just written down attributes that well defined our mother. She had a great sense of humor. It was intelligent, but never sarcastic. It could be irreverent, but never crass, and it was with her to the end. Our mother carried herself with dignity, and she was keenly sensitive to the dignity of others. She taught us that class has nothing to do with money or pretension, that true class has everything to do with how well you treat others, no matter their station. Our mother was intelligent. At the age of 12, she read Tolstoy's War and Peace, and her piercing mind never let up. As for her love, it was fierce, loyal, and honest. Above all, she loved her husband, her boys, her daughters-in-law, her sister, her brother-in-law, her nieces and nephews, her cousins. But above all of us, she loved her grandchildren. We couldn't complain about any of our kids in her presence because they were always perfect to her. She believed strongly in the adage that grandparents and grandkids get along so well because they have a common enemy. Philip and I had the opportunity to work with our mother. She was a smart businesswoman. She only joined the business once Joseph, the youngest of us, was in high school, and she always made sure to be home before Joseph returned from school so he would never return to an empty home. At first, it was hard on our dad having Mom in the business. He felt like she was encroaching on his space, but soon enough, he saw that when she took over a job, she often did it better than he did. He knew well enough to let her do her thing. She was especially good at negotiating prices with vendors. She drove those vendors hard, but they all loved doing business with her because she always worked in good faith and in good humor. She taught us that being in business could be every bit as noble as most any other profession. It just depended on how you conducted it. When we were kids and we weren't benching after the meal like we should, when we weren't saying the grace after meals, she would say to us, "Did you enjoy your meal?" And when we'd invariably say yes because she was a good cook, she'd say, "Then thank God for it." It was just a matter of gratitude. On that vein, I'd like to thank a few people. Thank you, Rabbi Blau and Rabbi Truboff, both of whom have expressed constant concern and made themselves constantly available for our mother, our father, and our entire family. We have tremendous gratitude for the many nurses and attendants who cared for our mother in the hospital and at home, and who treated her with grace and kindness. A special thanks to Johanna Ratner. We were in desperate need for a night nurse, and on short order. She made herself immediately available and spent many nights with our mother, including her very last one. Johanna's time with our mother was truly a labor of love. And then there's Kathy Basili. Sometimes when you're not paying attention, an angel can fly into your life. That angel was Kathy. Kathy took care of our mother as though she were her own. Do you know what it was like leaving our mother in Kathy's care? It's like when you have a babysitter who is so beloved by your children that they don't cry when you go out. That's how we felt when Kathy was with our mother. We all owe so much to our Aunt Marla Shafran. Somehow the relationship between her and our mother transcended even sisterhood. Our Aunt Marla doted on her sister and was with her every step of the way, and this special relationship extended to our Uncle Joe. How many Shabbases, how many Sabbaths did they spend down in University Circle to make sure our mother and father were not alone on Shabbat when our mom had to be in the hospital? And the special relationship between our mother and sister extends to her children, our cousins, Alana, Eric, and David. It was they who rallied my brothers and me when the bad news came in and we were still in shock. They offered emotional, professional, and material support when we needed it most. I would be remiss if I didn't mention Ronli Omer, our parents' personal trainer. She came by on a regular basis to work out with our mother. And weak as our mother was, she always responded to Ronli's exercises. And of course, Ronli wouldn't hear of taking any money for these sessions. Donna, my sister-in-law, wouldn't want to be singled out. It's true that all our mother's daughters-in-law were pillars of support during this difficult time, but Donna deserves a special thanks for her tireless work in scheduling the team of around-the-clock nurses and aides, enabling us to fulfill one of our mother's primary wishes, that she spend her last days in her home. To my brothers, each of whom rose to the occasion and gave our mother the care and love she needed and deserved, we all tried our best, which is all Mom ever asked of us. And to our father, who is our bedrock of kindness and strength, I can only say the famous words of Moses that you always turn to, Chazak v'amatz. Be strong, be courageous, for Hashem is with you, and you are surrounded by all of us who love you. Our mother hated cloudy, cold days. They depressed her, and God, in his infinite kindness, made it so our mother's last days with her were unusually sunny and warm. Sunshine streamed through her window on the morning she passed away. Thank you, Hashem, for that gift, and thank you for giving us the wonderful mother we had. By the way, when we come home from the funeral, we're having spaghetti and meatballs.
I've spent much of my adult life trying to better understand what makes me the man that I am. The last several months, as Mom really suffered from a cruel illness, and the grace with which she did it, and it's hard for me to even imagine how she did it. It brought a lot of things into better focus for me. A lot of things I've come to really comprehend in a much more profound way how lucky I have been, how lucky my brothers have been to have her as a mother. I probably don't have to remind many people here that we live in an age where it isn't necessarily easy to live a religious life. Modern life is corrosive to religious practice. And Mom grasped from a very early age, I recognize, that she grasped the fundamental truth that many in modern society have walked away from. And that is Reshit Chachma Yirat Hashem, that the basis of all wisdom is a fear of God. She went to such great effort to inculcate that in us, that particular value, because everything flowed from that value. One of her important role models when she was growing up was her grandfather, Hirsch Strick. Hirsch Strick was a deeply religious and a very God-fearing man. He was a baker. And in the early part of the 20th century, he owned a baker on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. At the beginning of the Depression, like a lot of other people, he suffered and he went into bankruptcy, and he couldn't pay a lot of his suppliers. As soon as he was able to get himself back on his feet, the first order of business, the first thing that Hirsch Strick did was he made sure that all of his suppliers were paid. That was his first order of business. When he could, he relocated to Colchester, Connecticut, where he rebuilt the bakery. He hadn't even yet put in his first orders, and he was told that there was a shipment waiting for him at the train depot in Colchester. This is bizarre because he hadn't ordered anything. He went to the train depot and he found there on a pallet a package of flour that was waiting for him. And one of these suppliers, hearing secondhand that he had reopened the bakery, sent it to him without even a request. He didn't expect, my mom used to point out very often, he didn't expect anything in return. He did it because this is what God would have wanted of him. It was, thanks. My mom often, she often repeated this story because it was so important in her life. It was so important in the way she raised us that we understood this. That the values that she wanted us to embrace as kids, values like decency, humility, and kindness, they flowed from a fear of God. This was basic. I've seen a lot of my friends who deviated from religion, and I believe that it's because this basic fundamental tenet has been abandoned. I grew up in Young Israel on Cedar Road. Many of you were with us there, and you might remember there was a woman who davened there. These are in the days of Rabbi Spiro, Rabbi Schubert Spiro. There was a woman who davened, and this woman suffered badly. She was a Holocaust survivor, and she had witnessed the greatest horrors of the Holocaust. There were frequent outbursts during shul, and as a child it was scary. It was frightening to us. And I can remember vividly as a child my mother taking us shopping and taking this particular woman to and from grocery shopping. She would make sure that we would physically be the ones to, as little kids, to carry out the groceries for her. She wanted us to understand that there was more to this woman, that there was a lot more to this woman, and that this woman who might have seemed frightening to us was actually somebody who badly was in need of our kindness. She needed us, and my mom how strongly felt that we needed to understand that, and we needed to live that particular value. One last story that I love to tell about Mom. We were so blessed. We lived in a home where every single chag was treated magnanimously, and there was a warm environment with wonderful food and wonderful company and a deeply religious experience, a joyous religious experience. But she would joke. This was very, very hard work, and she would joke that the raya, the proof that God is in fact a man, is that he created the chagim, because no God would do that to a woman. And so the humor was critical. The humor, as you've probably already gathered, she had a wonderful sense of humor, and she wanted us very much to experience that humor, to use that humor now to get through this. She knew this was how hard this would be for us, and she said, use humor. She wanted us, it was true, she told us, please get the crowd to laugh if you can. It's really important to me. We're going to miss her greatly. It's hard for me to imagine my life without her. But we will carry on.
Well, I'm the family anchor, and she would be mortified if we went too long. I'll just tell you some brief things. I do want to recapitulate a lot of the beautiful things that were already said by Ilana, by my brothers, by my father. And I want to tell you a little bit more and expound a little bit on what Rabbi Granstein said. You know, my mother had a very profound fondness or attachment to literature, to music, to art. You might know that in her last few years, she acted as a docent at the Cleveland Museum of Art. And she took great pride in that, and she learned, and she dedicated hours and hours and hours to do that. And I think one of the things that she enjoyed most about it was being able to share that with the people who she took through the museum. And that was something that was very important to her. She always wanted us to be reading, always wanted us to be listening to music. She had some, arguments, as most families do. She could not stand Bartok. That was the big argument in the family with regards to music.
She had a fondness for words. She was always peppery. If we would say a word that wasn't quite fitting in the sentence, she would throw out the right word. If we used the wrong, use of there, or if we used the wrong words here and there, she would throw it in. And she had a fondness for invective. But it was never invective for invective's sake. And I recall that after Philip was ill, she spent the time with him watching the entire Sopranos. The invective was particularly high at that time. But it was never as a replacement for language. It was always to enhance or to make it more colorful. She would be mortified if we would use it just as a way of replacing the language that we were using. And what we're all talking about is how much of a confidant she was to all of us, that we would approach her at all times and sit around the kitchen table and listen as she talked to us and cut to the heart of the matter of what we were going through and gave us advice. And it wasn't always the kind of advice we wanted to hear. It was what we needed at that time. And that's going to be sorely missed. Anybody who has seen a loved one through cancer, through the rigors and the horrors of cancer, knows what it's like to deal with this. And every day brings new terrors and fresh torments for the patient and for the families taking care of the patients. And I struggled to come up with an understanding as to why something like this would happen. And it occurred to me that this was a woman, Barbara Baskin, who spent a lifetime caring about other people and making sure that their needs were met before her own. She would just, in every situation, she would always be thinking about what was this person feeling, what was this person, did this person get enough food with this person. To this day, I can't stand buffets. If I see one person who hasn't eaten a buffet, I'm not eating. Right? This was how she was. And the Lord forced her in the last parts of her life to accept help from other people in a way that she had a very difficult time with. And it wasn't that he was forcing her to accept help. He was allowing us to give back to somebody who had done for us so many times. Both Philip and I had struggled through health issues, and she was by our side. 4 years ago, at this exact time, on Erev Yom Kippur, I had surgery. And without a word, she was next to me on Yom Kippur the entire day. Never a word, didn't say anything, just was there the entire day on Yom Kippur, which is not a great way to spend Yom Kippur in a hospital. We were allowed to give back in a small way to this woman who had done so much for us. And in that, there's a nobility and some meaning to be derived from this illness. I'm grateful to all of you. We are very grateful that you're all here, that you're able to share in it, and we hope for better times.
I'd like to call up a few of the grandchildren to share some words.
As most of you know, I go to school in Canada. 2 weeks ago, my mother called me to tell me Bobby was getting sicker. Being so far away without my parents, I took the news not so well. Eventually, I called my mother back and told her I wanted to come in. While I was on the plane, I started thinking about Bobby. The last memory I had with her was right before I left for Israel. We were sitting in the kitchen by the island reading the itinerary of my summer to come. The program I went on was called Yad B'Yad. To summarize Yad B'Yad, it is a summer Israel experience with children who have disabilities. While talking about the different places I would be visiting, Bobby kept on praising me, saying, "You're going from one chesed to another. You are going to leave this trip a tzaddiket." I then asked her, "How many cheseds did you do until you were a tzaddikah?" She then answered, "Live each day to the fullest." All through the summer, as I visited orphanages and homes for the blind, I lived like that. Each day to the fullest. And sure enough, I had the best summer yet. That was my last real experience with the Bobby we all know and love. So when I got off the plane and arrived in Cleveland, we went to the hospital to visit her. I walked in and ran for the couch because I didn't know what to say or do. 15 minutes later, Bobby told Benji, "Take me to the couch. I want to lay with Gila." Even though she was in terrible mental and physical pain, she wanted to sit with me. I took a deep breath and remembered the conversation I had before the summer. Live each day to the fullest. So I sat next to Bobby, overcame my sadness, and spoke to her like it was before the summer. We started talking about Yad Yad, and I just kept on going. All the thoughts about her current situation left my mind, and it felt like old times. She helped me through the conversation without even knowing. Because of her, I now try to live my life to the fullest every day, and I appreciate everything more now. I didn't just lose a Bobby, I lost a friend who supported me and guided me from the moment John and my mom met, and who taught me never to leave the house without having my nails done. Sarah recently shared a thought with me, and I think this is a representative of what all of her grandchildren feel. Bobby was always there for us. She could sense when we were feeling upset, and even in our worst moods could always manage to get us to laugh and feel better. It seems like all of her actions were only to make us as happy as possible and to bring our family closer together. Thank you.
We are all here today because our Bobby and our favorite Bobby passed away yesterday. It's hard on us all. We all helped Bobby when she had her first cancer and then when she had her second cancer. All of us know that Bobby would be happy if she knew that we were happy, even if she passed away. Goodbye, Bobby. You will always be in our hearts. Without you, none of us would be here.
In the verses of praise, we sing about Anash's Chayil on Friday night. It's clear that she's a woman of tremendous strength. That's what Chayil means: strength, fortitude, valor. All who knew Barbara could see that she had strength in abundance. How else could she raise 4 rambunctious boys? How else could she be a second mother to her niece and nephews, and a loving grandmother to so many, many more? Anash's Chayil is completely dedicated to her family. As it says, Sophia Alichos Besa, she watches over the ways of her household. She anticipates the needs of her children and her husband even before they do. Barbara had a dedication to her family that was awe-inspiring. That dedication for Yehuda, the love of her life, for her sons, their wives, her niece, her nephews, and especially for her grandchildren. Barbara was also wise, as it says, Piha Patcha V'chachma. Her mouth opens with wisdom. She was smart. She was insightful. She saw things that other people did not see. She was a shrewd businesswoman, a true partner in the family's business. And I think her wisdom also enabled her wonderful sense of humor. Nothing made her happier than to see the faces of the people she loved light up with laughter. Of course, Barbara wasn't just loving and wise. Perhaps most importantly, as the verse continues, V'tarat chesed al lishona, the teachings of loving kindness were always upon her tongue. She modeled what it meant to care for others. She wanted to make sure that her children and her grandchildren understood what it means to be sensitive to those who are less fortunate. For her, that meant helping others where and when she could, not necessarily in the spotlight, but often in those moments when nobody is watching, but even a small action can make a world of difference. In the end, the Eshes Chayil is the matriarch of her family. She's the glue that holds it all together. And Barbara was a true Eshes Chayil. I don't think it's incidental that Barbara passed away in this unique time between Yom Kippur and Sukkot. While these days don't have a name, I think we can all feel that there's something special, something unique about them. On Yom Kippur, after doing the hard work of tshuva and gaining forgiveness, we prepare ourselves for a different kind of experience on Sukkot. We finally shed our baggage and look forward to returning to a more natural, innocent, and joyous way of life. In Jewish thought, sitting in the sukkah is a return home. It's a return to the loving embrace of God and our family. When I spoke with Barbara in recent weeks, she would often find her memories turning to the place where she most felt at home, the beautiful town of Colchester, Connecticut. Though she and Marla grew up in Rochester, their mother's family lived in Colchester, and for them, it was a very, very special place. Their mother's parents were wonderful people, deeply religious, and involved in the small Jewish community there. In fact, Barbara and Marla would spend the entire month of the Chagim, the entire month of Tishrei there, from before Rosh Hashanah until after Sukkot. Now, most of us, when we go visit family for a holiday, we get there right before the Chag begins, and we leave as soon as Havdalah is done. However, when you're there with family for the Chagim for weeks at a time, it turns it from being a place you visit into a second home. That's what the experience of Sukkot is supposed to be. When we dwell in the sukkah, we feel wrapped up in the warmth and the love of God and our family. The Ari HaKadosh writes that a sukkah requires 3 halachic walls, 2 full ones and 1 partial one at least. And he compares it to when we embrace another with our arm. Then we reach out and embrace them. It's the equivalent of the 2 walls and the partial wall, essentially making a sukkah. For Barbara, going to Colchester each year was to experience the loving embrace of God and the one she loves. It was this experience that Barbara was able to take with her throughout her life, that profound sense of home, and bring to her own family. Creating a Jewish home is no easy matter. It requires hard work and sacrifice, but Barbara intuitively understood how it is done. Barbara also spoke about how the sukkah in Colchester was so small. It never looked like there would be enough room for all the family to fit inside, but somehow they would still find a way. Of course, that's also the power of the sukkah and the holiday of Sukkot. The Talmud makes mention of the fact that it's appropriate, or would be appropriate, for all of Israel to dwell in one sukkah together. Just as the Arba Minim, the 4 species, represent all different kinds of Jews bound together as one, so too does the sukkah represent the possibility for all Jews to come together under God's presence. One of Barbara's incredible gifts was her ability to keep expanding her sukkah to include all the people that came into her life. Whether it was her daughters-in-law, again, her niece and her nephews and their spouses, or all of her beloved grandchildren. Each new person that came into the family was made to feel that they too had a space in Barbara's sukkah. She created special relationships with each one of you. She made time for each of you, and she made each of you feel special, each in your own way. At its best, that's what the sukkah is supposed to be about. We welcome guests into our sukkah, and in doing so, we make them feel like they are finally at home. Another aspect of Colchester that Barbara forever carried with her was a sense of Yirat Shamayim, fear of God, fear of heaven, and the genuine humility that flows from it. It's another critical aspect of being an Eishes Chayil, as it says, Sheker Echein Behevel Hayofi, Isha Yirat Hashem Hi Titzalal. The grace is deceitful and beauty is vain. A woman that fears the Lord, she is the one who should be praised. I think Barbara learned this Yirat Shamayim from the time she spent with her grandparents in Colchester, who were simple yet pious Jews deeply involved in their community, who always demonstrated both integrity and great kindness. Authentic humility stems from the realization that we are not the center of the world. No matter how much we seek to control reality, we recognize that there is a higher power. Sitting in the sukkah is supposed to inculcate within us that same feeling. For to sit in the sukkah is to dwell in God's presence, hovering just a few feet above our heads. The rabbis teach us that a sukkah more than 20 amot high, about 60 feet or so, is pasul. It's invalidated. It doesn't count. And this is because the schach is so high up that it just doesn't catch our eyes. And therefore, if we sit in such a big sukkah, we won't be reminded of the divine presence. The fact is that most of us spend pretty much the entirety of our lives in a sukkah psula. And what I mean is that we so easily forget day after day the fact that God's presence is to be felt at all places and all times. We so easily forget what's really most important in our lives. Barbara was one of those rare individuals who was different. It was as if she always sat in the sukkah. And to be with her was to be with someone who never lost sight of what one's true priorities are supposed to be. She never stopped reminding her family to laugh and to love, and even until her final moments, she never stopped showing them what a home is truly supposed to be. She was a true Eishes Chayil. As we say goodbye to Barbara today, I know that her family wants to thank her for her incredible generosity. She lived a wonderful life and was able to give so much to those she loved. All her grandchildren treasured the relationships that they shared with her, each one in their own way. Her daughters-in-law are so grateful that she raised 4 boys, each one of them to be a true mensch. Her boys are so grateful for her love and the love that they shared with her, a love that's truly palpable. They would do anything for her, and their love for her is more than words can express. And Yehuda, you most of all, she was your partner in everything. The two of you have so much to be incredibly proud of. And you, I think, said it yourself best. She was the best thing that happened to all of you. May Barbara's soul forever be bound up in the bonds of eternal life. And may her soul, may her memory forever be a blessing. At this time, I'm going to recite Psalm 23. We're not going to recite Kil Malay because we're in the period between Yom Kippur and Sukkot. Bizmar leDavid, Adonai roi lo echsar. A song of David, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Binot eshe yarbit seini, al mei menuchot yinaleini. God causes me to lie down in lush pastures. God leads me beside tranquil waters. Nafshi yishoveh v'yancheni v'maglei tzedek l'man shemo. God restores my soul and guides me in righteous paths for God's name's sake. Gam ki elech begeit salmaved lo ira ra ki ate imadi shivtecha mishantecha ima yenachamuni. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you, God, are with me. Your scepter and staff, they comfort me. Ta'arach lefanai shulchan neged sarai. Dishanta v'shemen roshi kosi rivaya. You prepare a table before me in full view of my adversaries. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Achtav v'chased yerdefuni kol yemei chayai v'shabti b'veit Adonai li orech yamim. May only goodness and kindness pursue me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord for the length of my days. In just a bit, we'll continue with the burial at Mount Olive Cemetery. Shiva will be at the home of Dr. Yehuda Baskin. Today, following the burial, Mincha Marv will be tonight at 7 p.m., and Shiva will be tonight until 9. Tomorrow morning, Shacharit is at 8 a.m., and Shiva will continue. They'll daven Mincha at the home at 4:30, essentially ending Shiva around 5 o'clock. While Shiva ends with the Yom Tov, the family will also be happy to have visitors over the days of Yantif and Shabbos as well, between 3 to 6 p.m. In the afternoon on Thursday and Friday at the home of Dr. Yehuda Baskin, and on Shabbos afternoon at the home of Joe and Marla Shafran. Contributions can be made to Bikur Cholim in Barbara's memory.